Today, I break the silence on silence in negotiations, and along the way, I'll share 4 ways in which silence can be a useful tool in mutual gains negotiations. So, most of us experience silence as discomforting, nerve-wracking, and maybe problematic in negotiation. But the truth of the matter is that strategically used, silence is a very important skill and tactic. It can be used to help negotiations move forward, to promote creativity, to promote listening, and to break impasse. So I'm going to share with you these 4 key ways in which silence is actually useful in mutual gains negotiation. The first is recent research has shown that silence actually promotes creativity in negotiation. So this research is conducted by Jared Curhan and his colleagues at the MIT Sloan School of Business. And what it has shown is that using just 3 seconds of silence can actually help the initiator of that silence adopt a more deliberative mindset. In addition, and this is a really, I think, stunning finding, silence is the tactic that is most effective at leading to breakthroughs in negotiation. So specifically, when you're stuck and when you've reached an impasse, there is this tendency I think we sometimes have to keep blabbing, right? Fill the silence, fill the silence. But in fact, stopping talking is the thing that often breaks the impasse and has parties move forward. Now, a second really key use of silence is that it helps you and the other party in the negotiation handle your emotional refractory period. So what is an emotional refractory period? This is that moment in a negotiation when the other side has said something that is triggering and it provokes a set of very strong emotions, maybe anger, maybe hurt, maybe frustration. And in that moment, we have this tendency to get reactive, to defend, to name call, to label them in negative ways. And part of what's causing that is that a whole bunch of chemicals are being released in our brain that is overwhelming the frontal lobe of our brain, which is the more conscious, decision-making, deliberative part of our brain. But the use of silence actually gives us a chance to name to ourselves the set of emotions that we're feeling. And that naming actually helps move the brain activity from the amygdala, which is the more emotional center, back to the frontal lobe, the more conscious center. So Matt Lieberman, who's at UCLA, has called this affective labeling. So we use the silence and we say to ourselves, okay, I'm feeling angry and frustrated and hurt and annoyed right now. And just that task actually helps us then be more productive in the negotiation. A third way in which silence is incredibly helpful in negotiation is that it can actually slow down the pace of a negotiation. So when things are kind of going off the rails, maybe it's escalating, silence gives us a chance to minimize catastrophizing. So one of the things I noticed in a lot of the coaching that I do is that when people get emotional, part of what they're also doing is they're going down a path where they see the relationship falling apart, or they see this going to court, or they see themselves getting fired, or they see themselves maybe firing the other person. And by using silence, it gives you a chance to get a more accurate appraisal of what's going on. Yeah, this isn't a great moment, and we're not in a good spot. On the other hand, chances are that we'll still eat dinner tonight, and we'll probably still wake up tomorrow morning and go to the gym. So if we get that perspective, the catastrophizing tendencies disappear. And so silence is a really nice way to slow things down and to invite everyone at the table to be more purposeful. It's actually a tactic I use a lot when I'm mediating. Just kind of sitting there, letting people catch their breath, and then making a move to kind of reorient where we are in the mediation. Lastly, is the strategic use of silence can actually promote listening. So one of the things that is very clear is that active listening is the stealth weapon of a great negotiator. And you can't really be listening if you're doing all the talking. So pausing, asking a short open-ended question, or maybe offering a prompt like, say more about that, or I'd like to understand your thinking a bit more, and then stopping actually gets the other side talking. And that's a really useful thing in negotiation, because when the other side is talking, we're actually learning about what's important to them, what they need for a good outcome, what they find to be persuasive, what their objections are to our proposals. And all of that information is critical for whatever we're going to say next. Some years ago, I was actually participating in a conversation that involved some Palestinians and some Israelis. And there is a back and forth going on between an Israeli settler and a Palestinian. And at some point, I asked the Palestinian to just sit and listen quietly, and I sat and listened quietly. And the Israeli settler went on and on and on, basically giving a long historical narrative about how certain lands in the West Bank historically belonged to the Jewish people from literally biblical times and onward, and that the land was rightfully part of the Jewish people's land. And I could see the Palestinian getting very anxious, but I kind of asked him to remain quiet, and we kept listening and listening and listening. And then finally, the Israeli settler said, and there's one thing. If people could just understand this fact and appreciate that this land historically belongs to the Jewish people, well, then in that case, I could certainly be open to the idea that this might not be the historic time when Jewish people ought to be living on the land. Jaw drop. Now, did that advance any actual negotiation? No, we were in a dialogue. But what it showed is if you let people say their piece, even if they're repeating and redundant and passionate about it, that it opens up some space for them to think differently. So, to review, even though for many of us silence can be anxiety producing, and when we see it in a negotiation, we might feel anxious or panicky, I want to invite you to reorient your thinking on silence. In fact, there are 4 big attributes that can come from the strategic and purposeful use of silence in negotiation. First, it often promotes creativity. There's empirical research to show this. Related to this, more than any other tactic, the strategic use of silence helps parties break through impasse. Second, it can help you handle your own strong emotions during an emotional refractory period. Third, in that moment when a negotiation is seeming like it's going off the rails and everything is falling apart, silence is a way to slow down the pace of the negotiation and helps minimize catastrophizing. And lastly, when you are silent, it gives you an opportunity to listen. And any tactic that promotes listening promotes learning. So the next time you're in a negotiation and you're experiencing silence, do the best you can to use it as an opportunity to breathe in, be more deliberative, invite creativity, get your emotions in play, and get your emotions under control, and listen well. Next video, which is how can I manage strong emotions, theirs and mine, in negotiations. And don't forget to like this video, please subscribe to my channel, and of course ring the bell so you'll get notifications on all my new videos. Hey, don't let this station stay silent, keep watching.